Okay,
So,
great.
hi everyone, thanks for joining us. We have a very wide-ranging group of IECs, lot from Chicago, and then I don't know where all the rest of you, if you want to put in the chat where you're calling in from, that would be great. So that Professor Malkin will have a good idea of who he's reached. But so let me introduce Professor of the Practice Emeritus of Duke University. He was a professor of bioengineering and global health for many years, and he is one of the founders of International Research Institute of North Carolina. It was born out of a need and the pandemic, which kind of came together to produce an opportunity for the type of remote research that he and his colleagues have created. And he's been working with high school students for about 20 years as a professor. So this is not new work to him, just formalized under a different type of organization. So I'm going to let him take that further. And if you have questions and if you want to put them in the chat, I will try to capture them and ask him periodically. And then we're going to have a question and answer session at the end for probably about the last 20 minutes or so. So Professor Malkin, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Tina. I'm going to try to share my screen here. Can everybody see that okay?
Yep, we can see that.
Perfect. So thanks for coming, everybody. I really appreciate it. Tina, thanks for a great introduction. As she said, my name is Bob Malkin, a professor of the practice of biomedical engineering and global health emeritus at Duke University. And I'm also one of the founders of the International Research Institute of North Carolina, which is what I'll be talking with you about today. Well, that didn't change slides. What happened? There we go. So IRI is a remote research laboratory. All of the faculty have live laboratories, including myself. I have a lab meeting tomorrow night. This is for students who cannot access a live lab experience. My particular focus is on global health and medical instrumentation. I want to just give you a feeling for what can you do in a remote lab first, and then I'll talk to you about some specifics about IRI, and finally wrap up, as Tina said, with some questions that you might have. I'd be glad to try to answer those. So first of all, what is a remote lab? I'm going to use my lab as an example of what a student can do remotely. So just a little tiny bit about my background. I am a biomedical engineer. Most of my students at Duke are biomedical engineers. I started my first project was designing that device on the left there. That's a temperature control module for a heart-lung machine. Controls the patient's temperature during open heart surgery. Before this product hit the market, docs were literally sticking the tubes of blood into a bucket of ice or a bucket of warm water to warm and cool the patient during surgery. But most of my career was implantables. I did pacemakers in industry for just about 10 years and moved to Switzerland, actually designed a watch. That watch on the right there is one of my designs, the Omega Seamaster. It actually keeps time exactly like a $20 watch, but it is a $3,000 watch. I also moved to Thailand, taught English for a while. But after about 10 years, I decided to go back to graduate school and become a professor. My focus is on global health. Global health focuses on disparities across the globe. So if you look at this graph, this is the prevalence. In other words, what percentage of the population is infected with HIV. And what you can see is it varies tremendously. So at Duke University, we're less than 1%, and the entire United States is less than 1%. So the engineering school, my engineering school has 1,200 students. Maybe we have one HIV positive person. But if you look in the bottom here, let me see if I can annotate. Yeah. So if you look down here, down in the southern part of Africa, Republic of South Africa, Botswana, Lesotho, Mozambique, Malawi, etc. 35, almost 40% of the population is HIV positive. So, imagine your high school clients going to school where a third of their colleagues are HIV positive. This would change everything, right? It would change where you would meet your clients. It would change how you'd interact with them. It would change what sports they would play, where they would eat, what they would do to go to the bathroom. This is the focus of global health. These massive health disparities, not like a 5% difference or 2% difference. This is something like a 3,000% difference. And it really matters. It would affect everything that you would do or everything that anyone would do on a daily basis. Most of my work, both with my students and myself, have focused on donations. A lot of people want to donate medical equipment. They feel like donating will help. Actually, about 70% of donated equipment, well, actually about 70% of all equipment in the developing world doesn't work. And only about 10% of donated equipment will ever become operational. So when you donate, equipment, you do a wheelchair drive at your school or something, or one of your clients' schools, very little of that will have any impact at all and can have a very serious negative impact. This was a statement from the Director General of the World Health Organization, and it's based on a paper that I published with Laura Perry. And you can see Laura's name down there. She was a student in my lab. We did a study of about 115,000 pieces of medical equipment and published this data. I'm going to skip this one, actually. It just goes a little bit more into detail in Laura's study. A lot of what we've done in my lab is develop new pieces of medical equipment. So this is a device that was developed in my lab for treating hyperbilirubinemia or infant jaundice. The students here, you can see the students over here smiling. Those are all students that are in my lab. And this device actually works exactly like other devices that are available on the market today. But this device runs on a motorcycle battery because most of the hospitals that I work with do not have electricity 24/7. They only have electricity sometimes. And if your baby is born when there's no electricity, they have no ability to treat the kid with a traditional device. This is another project that I worked on with students again. This had a large team of students over many years. This is a device for treating cervical, well, it's actually for diagnosing and treating cervical cancer. Cervical cancer is a huge problem. After approximately age 25 for most women, you start getting a pap smear, the Dr. Papanikolaou smear. However, if you think about how that's done, that is literally a smear. So a scraping is taken from the cervix, it's stuck into a tube, the tube's sent off to a lab, the lab smears it across the slide, stains it, reads it, then calls back the doc. If there's a problem, the doc calls back the patient. Patient now comes in again and gets treated. That's never going to work at the places that I go. For example, the entire country of Guatemala does not have mail. There isn't a postal service in the country. So you can't send a letter to somebody with their lab results. Many of the women that I deal with do not have phones, so you can't call them either. And they're not going to walk 5 or 10 kilometers for you to tell them that their lab results aren't ready. Some other solution is required. So my students developed this. It's a head-mounted battery-operated colposcope. You can see it on Dr. Walmer's head there, the lead doc of this work. And it allows him, or many other docs have used it, to walk into a village, check all of the services in the village, and treat them all in one go without ever setting off samples or anything like that. This was covered in a New York Times article. If you're interested in reading more about it, the link is down at the bottom. This is one which is very active in my lab. In fact, I've had 3 high school students on this project, I think, this year. This is a device which prevents the transmission of HIV from mother to child. If you think again about my example, 30% of the population is HIV positive. That definitely includes moms. Many of them are giving birth at home. 95% of Ethiopians give birth at home. 67% of Tanzanians give birth at home. If you don't do anything, if the mom doesn't do anything, her child will become HIV positive through the birthing process. So there's several other risk moments. We developed, actually, one of my students, you can see Caroline Howard there smiling. That's her right there. And she developed this many years ago. It's a pouch which allows the mom to treat the patient at home, treat their child at home without having to go to a hospital immediately. You have to treat the patient within 24 hours or they will turn HIV positive. This is a very active project. More than 2.5 million units have been distributed to this project. I have a student right now working on our Ecuador project, expanding it to 100% of the Ecuadorian population. This has actually been covered many times in the news, but you can see a BBC report there, and actually had a student do a movie short that won some awards about this one, which is kind of cool. This is one which is just reached clinical trials just a few weeks ago. It was all student driven, 100% student driven. It is a throat cancer device for mostly following up patients after throat cancer. The usual device for this is about a $15,000 device used, more if you buy a new one. My students developed this alternative, which doesn't do as much as the most common device, but it only costs $600. So it's having a huge impact. And you can see my colleague there right here. That's Dr. Walter Lee, who's the lead doc on this work. And just to emphasize, I'm only talking about projects where students were involved in the project. So hopefully get a feel, hopefully you've gotten a feel, it's a lot. Students can do a lot. They're involved in a lot of the projects in my lab and in all the labs from all the faculty at IRI. Oh, I forgot to mention this one. This one was just published. This is my most recent publication with a high school student. That's Sanjana in the bottom left-hand corner. She's a high school student in Sacramento, California. And we just published this paper together on the effect of vaping, as well as nicotine-containing liquids, but most of the focus was on vaping to suppress the immune system. We've known for a long time that vaporizers release heavy metals into your body, but you know, when I was a boy, the only time anybody ever got exposed to a vaporizer was during general surgery. But now people are vaping 2, 3, 4 times a day. And they are getting exposed to these heavy metals. And Sanjana was able to show that people who vape have more frequent and worse cold and flu symptoms because their immune system is suppressed. She focused on Northern California. Great study. She did a really good job with this. So let me tell you just a few more minutes about IRI. IRI is a remote research opportunity for high school students. And even before I get started, all of our faculty, and I'll talk more about our faculty in a few minutes, all of our faculty all have live labs, meaning that people are coming into the lab. And certainly if your clients have the opportunity to go to a live lab where they can smell the formaldehyde, touch the test tubes, solder the boards, that's what they should do. That is the better experience. But there are a lot of students that can't do that. We have students from all over the world. Some of them, they simply do not have access to labs. I have a student from the United Arab Emirates. They will not allow her in a lab. It's not an option. It's simply not an option. Some students are far away from labs. You know, maybe they have a community college in their town, but they do not have an R1 school. They do not have a research university. So they just don't have access. And some students, for other reasons, can't have access to a live lab. So our remote opportunities are 100% remote. Duke does offer on-campus experiences, just to emphasize that again, but that's not this. This is a completely remote opportunity. IRI's focus is human subjects research. We're the only opportunity for students that are interested in human subjects research. There are many other research labs and remote research organizations that will organize those, but none offer human subjects research except us. We do offer other subjects as well. It just happens to be a specialty of ours. I'm sure you guys are already familiar with this, but I'll just review it very quickly for you. The main advantages for these kind of opportunities is you get to work with great faculty from world-class universities. All of our faculty are professors at US universities. And again, this is for folks who can't do this live. If you do have clients that are at IB schools, they can use this as part of their CAS. They can use this as part of their extended essay. Many of the students are using it as part of their college admissions packet. Certainly those students that are with IRI who publish, that is to say they publish a peer-reviewed scientific journal article like Sanjana. I just mentioned Sanjana, like her work. That really gave her a leg up. In fact, she's going to attend Duke in just a few months. And I'm going to see her on Thursday on campus, actually, for a visit. she certainly had a big advantage because she published. I did 2 years, I think, of the Pratt rounds, what's called Pratt rounds at Duke. That's the admissions work for Pratt, an engineering school at Duke University. Very few students have published. So this really can improve your application strength. And it's one of the main reasons that students get involved. They demonstrate if they take our RA program, I'll talk about our programs in just a minute, really demonstrates a deep, long commitment to a research activity, deep, long commitment to something. They do get letters of recommendation. If they do the human subjects research, they'll get the certification for that and show that they can do extra academic work. And of course, as I mentioned, publication. I can tell you for sure that I read thousands of college applications. What we're mostly looking for is clarity of thought, clarity of writing. If you have published, you have already demonstrated that, as well as curiosity. Now we have 3 programs at IRI. Now I'm talking specifically about IRI. I've been talking mostly about our research assistant program. That is our flagship program. That's our main program. Students become full members of the lab if they join the RA program. I have a lab meeting tomorrow night, as I mentioned. My postdoc will be there. My graduate students will be there. My undergraduates will be there, and my high school students will be there. They're full members of the lab. They get all the networking advantages. They meet with my graduate students. I get to know them very well. I meet with all of my students, including my high school students, weekly to make sure their work is progressing and they're working towards a publication. All the RA students work towards a publication. This is a serious commitment. It's on a trimester basis. They join trimester by trimester, usually for about a year or a year and a half to get a publication. So this would be a junior starting, maybe even a late sophomore might start their work in the RA because they want to typically have their paper finished so that they can submit it as part of their college application, even for early decision submissions, which, as you know, would be in the fall of their senior year. So this is typically joined pretty early. We offer an introduction to research program. This is much, much shorter. We actually offer this in a boot camp version, which is a weekend, a pretty intense experience. But most students are joining our 4-week and 8-week program. This is just the introduction to research. So they just form a question and do the literature review. All students have to do this. The RAs do this. My graduate students, I do this. Everyone does this when they're starting a research project, but it's just the first 2 steps. It's much less time per week. It's much shorter, as I just mentioned. It's about 4 to 8 weeks as opposed to a year. It's usually 1 meeting a week as opposed to 2 for the research assistant. Mostly they will be working with graduate students. However, all of our students work with university faculty. All of our students are mentored by university faculty, US university faculty. This one ends with a complete literature review, including the oral presentation. So they do get experience presenting a scientific presentation, as do the RA students, but the intro to research students do as well, and a written literature review. And finally, our newest program is called the Science Beat. This is typically our youngest students, freshman, sophomore. We even can take a kind of advanced middle school student. This is where they take a journal article, maybe from JAMA, or Science, or Nature, and they create a rap song around the journal article. So they have to deeply understand the journal article, and they also have to have the love for music. This is a partnership with myself at Duke University and Dr. Kyle Adams at the Indiana University School of Music. They also get, in addition to the 2 of us as university advisors, as faculty mentors, they also get a graduate school from the music school and a graduate student from the sciences to help them create this rap song. Great program, a lot of fun. Students really enjoy this one. Now, we do offer several different formats for your students to join some of the programs. Research assistant, as I already mentioned, is a 16-week term, and with multiple terms, it's always an individual. The Science Beat right now is also offered only in the 12-week format, only in one format, but we do offer individual and group programs. So if you have a group of students, that can significantly reduce the cost. That's one of the reasons that people join a group program for this Science Beat. The intro is offered in a bunch of different formats. We do offer both the individual and the group format. So the individual format is 8 weeks, 8 sessions. The group format is also 8 weeks and 8 sessions, but as they are working with a group, the cost is significantly lower. We also offer an express version. This is our most popular program, actually, which is a 4-week program, 2 meetings a week, 2 mentorships a week. It's the same program as our individual program, but it goes really fast. So it's a great alternative for those who want to get it in the summer. That's when we offer it, and that's when we offer it the most, I should say. And that's when most people take that one. We also will be offering a boot camp. I don't remember the schedule of that. We offer that about 4 times a year. This is 8 sessions in 2 days. This is a killer intense program. It's really for students that can handle something like this, but it is an interesting program. It's kind of a hybrid between our individual and group program, but at a really intense format. Again, these are introduction programs, remember, so they're ending at the literature review. They're not ending with a publication. All of these programs are offered all year round. We have starting dates roughly every 2 weeks. So I've got a meeting with a student tonight on our 4th session, I think. I have another intro student tomorrow morning. We have sessions starting all the time. Summer is certainly our most popular time for sure, but we offer the programs all year round when we start dates all year round. The boot camp is the most limited with just a few dates per year, and the RA program as well. Our programming is not competitive. We are not looking to limit the number of people that get into the program. They do have to complete an application. I'll talk about that in just a moment, but it's not competitive except for the RA program. It's not that competitive, but we have very limited number of spots. I think we only have about 10 or 15 spots this year for the RA program. But the intro program, we are not looking to exclude people. So there are people that we get, for example, that have had a little bit of a rougher time at high school. Maybe it hasn't gone as well as it should have. This is perhaps an opportunity to really show that, you know, they can handle the science. They can really handle an intense program. We are trying to make this available to everyone. Just a little bit about our faculty. This is our latest faculty roster. We're growing very quickly, so we just added a bunch of faculty. Of course, myself, I already told you about my interests. Dr. Lausis, who's mainly interested in radiation oncology, but also is interested in access to treatments. Dr. Jay Cooney is in neuroscience, mostly focusing on neuromodulatory effects, but other areas of neuroscience as well. Dr. Griffith is also doing the intro program as well as the RA program. She is mostly interested in color, in women of color, but also is interested in other aspects of, for example, immigrant health outcomes, legacies of apartheid, which is a really interesting area. So she's doing some super cool stuff. Dr. Camburn is one of our engineering faculty, mechanical engineering. He is actually not interested in radiation oncology. Most of his interest area is in urban computer science. Basically, most of his work is in computer science. He does do a little bit in some really cool projects on space propulsion, but most of his work is on computer science, which is large-scale simulations of city-sized work. Dr. Mills is also working in a lot of really interesting space projects. His mostly background is biomedical engineering, biology, but his wound healing is probably the most interesting area that he is working in. Dr. Delaval is working on nutrition, sports medicine, dietetics, mostly working on iron, some super cool stuff in Bangladesh as well. Dr. Antonelli is our theoretical mathematician, mostly studying epidemiology, the spread of disease in naive, but also heterogeneous populations. So some really interesting work there. Dr. Beck is gene science, mostly computer science, again, large data, as is most genetics, but also doing some interesting work on therapeutics, mostly interested in substance abuse, but some other areas as well. And I already mentioned Dr. Kyle Adams, who is working on our Science Beat project. I just wanted to mention a couple points here about our faculty. All of our faculty have a lot of years working with high school students. All of them actually do have live labs. So keep in mind, again, if you have a student that can access a live lab, that's what they should do. But if they can't, IRI is an option for them. All of our students work with these faculty, not just with graduate students, not with PhD candidates or PhD students. They're also working with them, but also with our faculty. Just a little bit more about admissions, and then I'll wrap up and see whether you guys have any questions. I already mentioned we have a lot of openings. Now the RA program is our most challenging program to get into. We have the most limited number of openings there. Advertising for myself, I have an opening in my lab right now, but so do many of other faculty. Some of their other faculty are already full. So it depends which faculty your student's interested in. The intro program, on the other hand, is a completely available program. We have many openings, rolling admissions. We have starting dates about every 2 weeks. So there is plenty of availability in the intro program. Science Beat program is kind of getting a slow start. So we do have some openings over the summer and in the fall. I do recommend that students start at least 45 days before their recommended start date, especially if they're interested in our financial aid program. We do offer financial aid. Financial aid is need-based. Pretty much everybody who qualifies for need-based aid does get it. So I really recommend that you tell your clients that don't hesitate to apply because of the cost of the program. The aid will help you, which actually I forgot to mention. Cost of the program range tremendously. So a group program with financial aid in the intro program, for example, that would be the cheapest option available. That's a few $100s. Whereas our RA program, 3 terms, publishing a paper, that's tens of thousands of dollars. So there's a really wide range of programs, costs, and depending on what your client is at, where they're at, we can advise which program to put them in that meets both their academic interests, but also their financial interests as well. If you are interested in having your students get involved right now, they can go right to the admissions office. They don't need to contact me. It's admissions@iri-nc.org. Usually Irma's answering the email. Irma is awesome, and she will be glad to answer any kind of questions about admissions process, get forms, anything that you need. Of course, you can go to our website, which I realize is not on this slide, so I'm going to add it. It's www.iri-nc.org. From the website, you can download, anything that you want. Of course, you can feel free to email me directly. My email address is right here on the slide. And actually, I'm going to go right ahead and type it in the chat window in just a few minutes as well.